You ever notice how the funniest dude in your circle is also the one with the most going on under the hood? The one who can clock a room in 2 seconds, who'll have everybody crying, laughing at a funeral, who turns every awkward silence into a bit. He's Gen X. He's black. He's tired. And he learned how to do that for a reason. I'm Franklin, and today we're sitting with something most people miss. The black Gen X fool isn't a fool. Never was. That class clown, that wisecracker at the family cookout, that uncle who can roast a sitting senator and his own cousin in the same breath, that face he wears is a tool, a very old tool, and it's been doing a lot of heavy lifting for 40-something years. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at that guy, or you're going to look in the mirror a little different. Let's start with what you actually see. You see a man in his 50s who walks into any room and makes it lighter. He's the one your coworkers love. He's the one your aunties pinch on the cheek. At the repast, he's got the whole back row holding their stomachs. He can talk to anybody, the dude at the gas station, the white lady at his job, the teenager at the register, the cousin just home from a bid, everybody. And every conversation ends with somebody smiling. That's a skill he started building when he was 8 years old, and the reason he started building it is sitting right there in the history books if you bother to look. Let's rewind. If you were black and born in America somewhere between 1965 and 1980, you came up in a very specific weather system. Bakari Kitwana, the writer, calls your group the hip-hop generation. Black folks born from 65 to 84, the ones whose worldview broke clean off from the civil rights, and black power folks who raised them. The historian Pero Dagbovi even splits you into two waves. The older half raised on black power era pride and nation conscious rap like Public Enemy and KRS-One, and the younger half who caught the back end of that and came up in something else entirely, something rougher. Because while you were learning your times tables, the crack era walked into your neighborhood and sat down on the couch. Now hold on, because the numbers here matter. Research by economist Roland Fryer at Harvard, looking at the crack era, found big jumps in fetal death rates, low birth weight babies, weapons arrests, and black children put into foster care. The share of black children in foster care more than doubled. So picture that. You're 10. Your cousin is in the system. Your other cousin is upstate. Your homeboy's mama is not the same as she used to be. Your homeboy's daddy is gone. Not dead necessarily, just gone. Swallowed up by something the news was calling an epidemic and the government was calling a war. And then in 1986, Congress passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, mandatory minimums. The infamous crack to powder sentencing disparity, same drug, different penalty, and you can guess who got the long end of the stick. By 1989, according to Britannica, 1 out of every 4 black men between 20 and 29 was either locked up, on probation, or on parole. 1 in 4. Sit with that number. That's your big cousin. That's your uncle. That's the boy who used to walk you home from school. So now ask yourself, if you're a kid in a house where the grown folks are stressed, scared, working 2 jobs, dodging the news, trying not to lose somebody, what's the most useful thing you can be? Funny. Funny is currency. Funny gets you a smile out of mama. When mama has nothing left, funny gets you out of a whooping. Funny gets your daddy to put the bill down for 10 seconds. Funny gets the bully at school to laugh instead of swing. Funny keeps the cops loose at a traffic stop. Funny is a shield, a passport, a Swiss Army knife. And if you got good at it, really good at it, you noticed pretty quick that being the fool in the room was the safest face to wear, because the fool doesn't threaten anybody. The fool doesn't get took seriously, which means the fool doesn't get marked as a problem. The fool can say the truth and people will laugh instead of getting mad. The fool can criticize the whole setup and get away with it because, hey, he's just clowning. You see where I'm going. That move, looking like a fool while being the smartest one in the room, is old. So old that Henry Louis Gates Jr., the Harvard professor, wrote a whole book about it back in 1988 called The Signifying Monkey. And what Gates lays out is that there is a black American rhetorical tradition, call it signifying, that goes all the way back across the water to the Yoruba trickster figure Esa Elegbara, the trickster who plays dumb, The trickster who talks in riddles, the trickster who looks like he's just running his mouth but is actually saying three things at once. One for the surface, one for the people who know, and one to flip the whole conversation upside down. That tradition lived. It came over here. It survived slavery. It survived Jim Crow. It survived everything they threw at it. And by the time you were a kid in 1982, it was sitting right there in your grandfather's jokes, your uncle's stories, the dozens being played on the porch, the way the deacon at church could throw shade in a sermon without ever raising his voice. You inherited it. You didn't even know you inherited it. You just knew that being clever with your mouth could keep you alive in a house on a block where the temperature was already at 110. Now layer something else on top. A lot of you came up watching yourselves. Both parents working or one parent working 2 shifts. Older sibling in charge or nobody in charge. A whole stretch of hours every afternoon where the only adult in your life was the TV. And what was the TV showing you? By the time you hit your teens and 20s, the TV was showing you Martin Lawrence, born in 1965, right at the front edge of Gen X, class clown his whole life, built a career out of physical comedy, faces, voices, the whole nine. And Lawrence himself told the Source magazine something I want you to hear because it's the entire thesis of this video in one sentence. He said his comedy seeks to poke fun at the very things that produce pain and anxiety in life. Read that one more time. The very things that produce pain and anxiety in life. Same with In Living Color. Same with Living Single. Same with The Wayans Family. Same with every black comedy that came out of the late 80s and early 90s and basically defined what black television looked like for a decade. Martin Alone, which premiered in 1992, is still being talked about 30 plus years later, according to Collider, as a groundbreaking sitcom because it captures something real about how a generation of black folks were processing the world. They were laughing at it. Laughing at it was the only move that didn't cost anything they couldn't afford. Now here's where it gets heavy, and I'm going to give you the humor break in a second, so hang with me. A 2021 study out of Ohio State, led by a researcher named Hui Jing, looked at how Gen X and Gen Y are doing health-wise compared to earlier generations at the same age. The finding was rough. The study reported worse physical health, more depression, more anxiety, and more unhealthy behaviors than the cohorts that came before them. And this is the part that should make you sit up. The increases in chronic inflammation, which is your body's red alert system stuck in the on position, were concentrated in black Americans, particularly black men. The same black men who were 10 years old when crack hit, the same black men who learned to be the funniest one in the room before they learned to drive, the same black men whose bodies have been on quiet high alert since 1986. And then the American Psychological Association ran its Stress in America survey in 2020 and reported that around 1 in 5 Gen Xers said their mental health had gotten worse from the year before, a number only Gen Z topped. So you've got a generation that learned to laugh because laughing was safer than crying. And now the bill is showing up in the blood work, in the doctor's office, in the marriages, in the long quiet drive home after the cookout where everybody was dying, laughing at his jokes, and nobody asked him how he was doing. All right, humor break, because I told you I would. You ever notice how the funny one at the family event is also the one who disappears for 45 minutes and nobody knows where he went? He's not in the bathroom. He's not on the porch. He's in his car. He's sitting in the driver's seat with the AC on and the radio low, just looking at the dashboard, recharging, because being on for 4 hours straight is work. And then he comes back in and somebody hands him a plate and says, "Boy, where you been? Do the voice, do the voice." And he does the voice. Of course he does the voice. He's been doing the voice since 1983. We laugh. But also, let me bring this back around. The fool, in the old African tradition that Gates writes about, Esu Elegbara, the signifying monkey, is the figure at the crossroads, the one who controls communication between worlds, the one who knows everybody's business because nobody guards their words around the fool. The fool sees everything because nobody thinks he's watching. That's your uncle. Your uncle who can tell you exactly which cousin is about to get divorced, which one is hiding a gambling problem, which one's kids are not doing well in school, and which auntie is mad at which other auntie and why. He knows. He knows because for 50 years he's been the safe one to talk to, the non-threatening one, the one you can spill to because he's just going to make a joke and pass you another plate. He's the family's emotional Wikipedia, and nobody has ever once asked him what he carries. And here's the part I want you to really sit with, because this is the angle nobody talks about. That mask works. It worked when you were 9 and you were trying to make your mama smile after a long shift. It worked when you were 14 and you were trying to get out of a fight in the hallway. It worked when you were 19 and you were trying to get hired at a job where you were the only one in the room who looked like you. It worked at 30 when you were a young father trying to keep the energy up in the house, even though the bills were stacked on the counter. It worked. That's the thing. It worked for 40 years. It is the most effective tool you ever picked up. And now you're 50-something and the tool is starting to wear you out, because a tool that good doesn't come with an off switch. You don't get to clock out from being the funny one. The room expects it. The family expects it. Your boys expect it. Your wife expects it. You expect it. And underneath all that performance is a man whose inflammation markers are creeping, whose blood pressure is creeping, whose sleep is bad, whose joints hurt, whose father probably never told him he loved him, whose mother is now in a stage of life where she needs him, whose kids are grown and have their own stuff, and who has not, in his entire life, ever been asked, with real eye contact, "How are you, though, really?" That's the cause. Now, I'm not saying drop the bit. I would never tell you to drop the bit. The bit is part of you. The bit is part of an inheritance that goes back across an ocean, that survived things that should not have been survivable, that kept the whole people sharp and laughing and alive when the official channels were trying to wear them out. The bit is sacred. Don't drop the bit. But here's the move. You can be the funny one and also have one person, one who gets the unfunny version, one friend, one cousin, one therapist, if you can swing it, one somebody who you don't have to do the voice for, where you can sit down, take the mask off, set it on the table next to your keys, and just be the man who's been carrying it for 40 years. Because the trickster figure that Gates writes about, the signifying monkey, the one your whole comedic instinct comes from, even he had a place to go home to. The mask was for the road. The mask was for outside. A lot of y'all have been wearing it in the house too. And the house is where the inflammation lives. One more thing before I let you go. That generation right above you, the civil rights generation, the black power generation, the folks who raised you, they had a different way. They had marches. They had organizations. They had a language for what was happening to them. They could name it. They could point at it. They could say, this is the enemy, and we are fighting it together. You didn't get that. The crack era hit, and there was no march for that. There was no organization for that. There was no clean enemy you could point at, because the enemy was a substance, a policy, a sentencing guideline, a missing parent, a TV that wouldn't stop, and a quiet sense that the adults in your life were overwhelmed by something they couldn't name either. So you made a different tool. You made the joke. You made the bit. You made the funny face. And you survived. You survived in a way nobody gives you credit for, because the survival looked like a punchline instead of a protest sign. But it was the same instinct. It was the same line back across the water. You weren't being a fool. You were being the signifying monkey in a polo shirt in 1989 on a porch in your neighborhood, keeping the whole block laughing while the sirens went by. That's who you've been. That's who your uncle has been. That's who your homeboy has been. And if you're the one who recognized yourself in this whole thing, yeah, I see you. You can put the mask down sometimes. The tradition doesn't require you to wear it every minute. Even Esu went home at night. Hold up. Before you go, give me 30 more seconds, because I left something on the table and I don't want you to walk off without it. I told you the mask was a tool. I told you the tool worked. I told you the tool is wearing you out. What I didn't tell you is what happens when the mask comes off in the wrong room. Because some of y'all already tried. You tried with a woman who said she wanted to know the real you, and the second you showed her the real you, she got uncomfortable and started asking when the funny one was coming back. You tried with a homeboy who didn't know how to hold it and changed the subject to the game. You tried with your own mama, and she said, "Boy, you all right, you fine, don't start that." And so you put the mask back on, and you told yourself, "See, this is why I don't do that." And the mask got a little heavier that day. Heavier, because now you had proof. I'm telling you, that's normal. That's not the end of the road. The first person you try is almost never the right person. The signifying monkey didn't pick his audience at random either. He knew who could hear what, and he saved the real talk for the ones who could hold it. You get to be that careful too. You get to audition the room before you take the mask off in it. Same intelligence that kept you alive at 14, pointed in a new direction. Find the one room, take it off in there. Keep the bit for everybody else. They earned the bit. They didn't earn the man underneath it. All right now, there's another one waiting for you right there on the screen. Go on and tap it.